Welcome to our orientation on LDM Practicum, portfolio guides and evaluation forms. So may I invite everyone for our opening prayer through video presentation.
Ayang magiliw, pero sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulutig, di ka pasisigil. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mo wagaw, may nilagang tula at awit sa paglayang inamaan. Ang isap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdiningning, ang bituin at araw na kailan pa may di magdidilig. Lupa ng araw ng walhatik pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Aming di kaya na pag may makaapi, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Let us bow our heads and feel the presence of the Lord. Almighty God, Creator of all, we come humbly into your presence as we lift our hearts and our lives up to you. Thank you for all the countless blessings that you have given us. Forgive our human frailties, insecurities, and doubts. Fill our hearts with love and teach us to share it with all. Mold us, shape us, and use us for your perfect will. We thank all our teachers, administrators, and all the men and women who have trained hard and used their skills in uplifting the education system, even in the midst of pandemic situation that we encounter. We also want to thank our stakeholders for giving their commitment and passion and giving a hand to our institution. Lord God, we give you thanks and praise for the people in our lives who have taught us, supported us, and helped us to take steps forward in our journey with you. Help us to encourage and support all those who work in education and appreciate the important work they do. Empower them by your Holy Spirit as they seek to live out their calling and serve you in this way. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Mabuhay lungsod ng Pasay, perlas ng kamay nilaan, hangad ay kaunlaran sa lahat ng larangan. Mabuhay lungsod ng Pasay, lungawan ng sandaigdigan, ugali, mapagtanggap ng tunay na mamamayan. Pasay, mahal kong bayan, sa puso'y nag-iisa. Pasay, dakilang bayan, Pasay, mabuhay ka. Ang lahat ay makadiyos, makabansa, makatao, masikap at mapagmahal. Ang tunay na
Okay, so to our schools division superintendent, Dr. Loretta Vitor Campo, and to our OIC ASDS, Dr. Arturo A. Tolentino, to all the EPS and PSDS, and to our Chief Education Program Supervisor in CID, Mr. Librado F. Torres, to our SGOD Chief, Dr. Mirna Bigasa, and to all the participants, and to Miss Jessie J. Reyes, Sir Eric Comia, and to Sir Romy Sokaw. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our orientation on the LDM Practicum Portfolio Guides and Evaluation Forms. And to begin with, would like to call on our OIC ASDS to give us an opening remark, Dr. Arturo A. Tolentino.
Should I say, sa ating pong lahat, lalong-lalo na po sa very supportive SDS of SDO Pasay na walang iba po na kundi si Dr. Loretta B. Torrecampo, SESO 5. So, syempre sa atin pong audience ngayon na nandito upang daluhan ang isang napakaganda po ngayong pagpupulong upang ma-update po tayo regarding the LDM, to the organizer, to the principals. Isang good afternoon, everyone. So we are so happy because in spite of all the busy schedules that all of you have, you still have time to be with us today just for you to be updated what to do, what to expect regarding your LDM portfolio. So we are challenging and encouraging everyone to stay tuned so that every learning that will be delivered today will be grasped by everyone, by every participants, and will be applied in your respective institution. Again, good afternoon and thank you for your support.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arturo A. Tolentino. And to give us a message, please welcome our beloved SDS, Dr. Loretta B. Torrecampo.
A wonderful afternoon to everybody. I know that you have another seminar, but then this is very important to all of you, to all of us. To be honest, I'm so interested with the LDM. Medyo, hindi ako naka-encounter ng seminar ng LDM. And upon interviewing Ma'am Jessie, I realized that this is a very, very meaty seminar orientation to all of us. Why? Because this is the time wherein your portfolio will be reviewed, will be evaluated using the rubrics set by the department. Having this LDM, this is an action of the department to ensure that the learning modality is effective. The learning should take place between the teacher and the learners. And at the same time, our instructional supervision is also tested. And when I found out the documents, ito po, papakita ko po sa inyo yung sample lang ho ito ng mga pinapotocopy ko kay ano ko kay Ma'am Jessie, and one sample was ito yung gwapo. Gwapo, papakita ko po sa inyo kung kaninong output. Ayan, si Mr. Severo, Dr. Severo A. Bahado. Sa kanya po yung output na pili ni Ma'am Jessie i-present sa akin na ginawa po ng ating magiting na principal. Upon reading the outputs, I became aware that it's very comprehensive. The output should be very comprehensive so that this will show how you do your job. Mahirap naman maningala sa langit at lagyan ng input yung mga vacant na line kung hindi mo naman ginagawa. And also, yung talagang nagawa naman po yung trabaho, napakadali naman lagyan yung mga lines na kailangan sagutan. And we are expecting that all of you should have a very satisfactory or excellent rating from the raters. So syempre may kanya-kanyang raters ang bawat area natin. And today, kindly listen very well so that your evaluation should be yan lang naman yung tama po, hindi ho kulang at hindi ho tayo magkakaroon ng maraming complaints kasi yung pag-assess po ninyo ay makatuwiran at talagang pag kayo na ho ang nag-rate ay wala hong masasabi. So listen very well to our sharer or to our resource person so that when you have the outputs of each teacher or of each principal, you can give the best rating. Siyempre ho, basta ayos yung trabaho, best ang maibibigay. And later, those results will be used by us to improve our work. So let us enjoy the day o kahit na ho kumakain kayo dyan o may kinukot-kut, basta ho intindihin po natin maigi. Good day and let us enjoy our work.
Alright, thank you very much, Dr. Loretta Vitore Campo. Ayun nga, ang sabi ni Ma'am, makinig lang po tayo lahat sa ating lahat ng viewers today, sa ating 154 viewers today. Sana po makinig po kayo and standby po tayo kasi po i-flash po mamaya ang link sa ating attendance. So kapag hindi po kayo nag-standby, hindi kayo nakinig today, wala po kayong attendance. At ayun na nga po. So let's start na the discussion. To discuss the Practicum portfolio guide and evaluation forms for teachers, please welcome, I'm sorry, mali pala. Practicum portfolio guide and evaluation form for school LAC leaders po pala ang i-discuss. And please welcome the Principal 3 of Padre Zamora Elementary School. Please welcome Mr. Romy P. Sokaw.
Thank you, Sam. We start some process. Okay, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to greet our dynamic leaders of the SDO Pasay, headed by Dr. Loretta B. Toricampo, our Schools Division Superintendent, and our OIC Assistant Schools Division Superintendent, Dr. Arturo Tolentino. Fellow educators, magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. I am tasked to share with you guide for LAC leaders in the conduct of LDM portfolio LAC guide and at the same time the guide to building portfolio. So simulan ko po sa guide for LAC, conducting an LAC. So meron po siyang tatlong column. Ang first column po ay get started, activity, and suggested duration. So, when we conduct the LAC facilitator can use this time to remind the LAC group on norms. So, kumustahan kasi matagal po itong hindi nag-resume. So, ngayon, nag-implement. So, ngayon, punta na tayo sa paggagawa naman ng portfolio. So, kumustahan siyempre. The duration of this LAC of this part is 10 minutes. So, nakalagay naman po dyan yung suggested duration. Set the scope and objectives of the session. Of course, you will focus on ongoing LDM practical portfolio building. So, yan yung focus ng LAC. So the facilitator should set that this session will build on the last pre-implementation module, which is about portfolio building. Specifically, it will help them clarify concerns on what to include in their practicum portfolio on how it will be evaluated. So, dito po sa LAC na gagawin ng mga LAC leaders, dito po maliwanag nilang maintindihan kung ano ba ang ilalagay or ilalaman ng portfolio nila. So, to save time, each member will be provided with a copy of the supplemental guide for them to study in advance. So, free naman yung ano natin, yung ating subcopy ng supplemental guide na ipipresent ko later sa inyo. So, we can also share with this to our LAC leaders. By the way, the LAC leaders are those MPs, department heads in the school. So, yun po sila kasi ang nag-serve as LAC leader. They will be asked to identify the MOBs in the list that they already have. So, yun lang yung getting started. Parang purely kumustahan. And at the same time, the objective. Another, so, pwede na tayong mag-small group sharing. Inuulit ko po ulit, this is only a guide to conduct an LAC. Pwede namang i-modify, pwede namang, kasi nakadepende ito sa oras ninyo. The activity should be the LAC facilitator will divide the group into groups with 3 or 5 maybe members. Only if possible, group members based on learning areas or grade level taught. Science teachers, pwedeng math teachers. And you will be guided by this question. Have you started gathering MOBs in your practicum portfolio? Or what artifacts or MOBs you have gathered show your progress in applying what you have learned in the LDM course? And what artifacts, MOBs for your LDM practicum portfolio do you have in common? So yun yung questions that will guide you to have a small group sharing. Yung artifacts dun ay wrong spelling po yun. So group will assign one speaker to share their answers with the big group. So, small groups can be held as breakout on platforms. Kung marami siguro ang LAC leader, pwedeng breakout on platforms such as Zoom, Facebook, or Viber. And kung ano pa man yan. So, a face-to-face LAC session are still prohibited. So, after the small group sharing, there's the so-called small group report. So, assigned speakers will share their answers with the big group. Each small group will be given 2 minutes to present their answers with the big group. So, 10 minutes po ang duration yun. LAC facilitator notes down and consolidates the responses and presents them in a table to identify similar and different answers. So, yun po ang pwedeng gawin dito. Ano ang common? Ano ba ang iba-ibang idea or perceptions doon sa question? So, pwedeng i-note down yun sa small group report. And then, pwede rin magkaroon ng big group or plenary sharing. So, dito, pwedeng i-present nung leader ng small group yung kanilang sagot. So, LAC facilitator asks members if this MOB satisfactorily document their learning growth and development on LDM implementation over time. So, LAC facilitator starts the conversation on the pre-work reading material, supplemental guide in building a developmental learning portfolio. So, to highlight key learnings of the lesson, the LAC facilitator may use the following synthesis questions. Ito, pwede po itong gamitin para ma-synthesize po yung mga gawa. Why do we need to have predetermined and self-selected MOBs? That's number 1. Second, how does aligning the MOBs with the professional standards help? And how can practicum portfolio building the stress-free? What MOBs from the 2020-2021 RPMS portfolio can be used in the LDM portfolio or vice versa? What other questions do you have that might need clarification? So may note po dyan. These questions may be taken note of by the LAC leader and brought up to your respective LDM codes for further clarification. So, ang suggested duration po ng conduct ng plenary ay 15 minutes. Okay? Again, sabi ko nga ito ay suggested guide lamang po ito. Sa big group plenary synthesis and action planning naman, the LAC facilitator synthesizes insight, shared and understanding gained from reading the supplemental guide. So the LAC facilitator asks members to identify the help they can give or would need building their own practicum portfolio and those of others. LAC facilitator sets a schedule for coaching or peer coaching session. And the other component is completion of reports. The LAC members complete the teacher's engagement report. So naalala nyo, meron tayong teacher's engagement report. So kukumpletuhin nyo ng LAC. And then the LAC facilitator completes the leader's LAC session reports. That is 2 minutes. So in total, 50 to 60 minutes. Almost 1 hour po yun. So hindi naman to matagal. Parang lang talaga to yung component lang ng ating LAC guide sa practicum portfolio natin. Okay? So, pumunta na tayo doon sa meat ng aking task ngayon, supplemental guide in building your LDM practicum portfolio. So, ito po ay yung aking second phase or part ng aking task na i-discuss ko mamaya kung ano ba yung mga component, ano ba yung mga MOBs na kakailanganin. Dapat sa first slide siya. Wala ito. Okay. So this guide has 3 columns. May 3 column po itong guide na to. Ang una pong column is yung list ng artifacts na ibibigay ko mamaya. To the daily outputs that you can create during the course of the year. Ang second column po, describe the artifact to be collected. Ano nga ulit yung artifacts? Artifacts are what we commonly refers to the means of verification or MOBs na tinatawag. So, ibig sabihin, it captures this progress and provide evidence that you have been applying in the workplace. So, yun po yun. So, artifacts, yun po yung mga MOBs na ginagawa ninyo na may kinalaman sa inyong gawain or sa inyong practice. Yan po ang artifacts. So, yan po ang makikita sa second column. Third column indicates professional standards that are met by the respective output. This provides information on how LDM outputs align with the school year 2020-2021 RPMS portfolio, which can guide in determining which outputs you can include in your IPCRF. And there could be other strengths in which the artifacts may contribute to their attainment but are not indicated in the table. So, yun po yung nakakalagay sa third column sa guide na babasahin ko mamaya. Okay? Ano po ang uri ng portfolio or artifacts? Number 1 is required artifacts. Pag sinabi pong required artifacts, yan po ay mga artifacts that you have to include in the portfolio as this covers the standard work that you do in the LDMs. So the keyword there is required. So kailangan talaga siyang maipakita or gawin. Pag sinabi namang self-selected artifacts are those that you might consider having in your portfolio to satisfy the criteria used in assessing it. I will repeat, required artifacts, and the other one is self-selected artifacts. Yun po yun. This is not an exhaustive list. You may add artifacts from your work that better illustrates your learning and application of the course. So use the Practicum Portfolio rubric to guide your artifact selection. Okay? So formatting tayo. Sa formatting, LDM Practicum Portfolio can be submitted in either printed or digital form. Sa digital submission may be collated in a slide deck, Google Slide, or PowerPoint. Is stored in a folder or other digital forms that the SDO may provide. A digital or electronic submission is encouraged to reduce physical contact during the pandemic and is portfolio management. And the other one is the printed submission. May be compiled in a folder or envelope. Siguro later we'll have a standardized formatting. Siguro i-discuss ng ating in charge para i-synchronize kung it's either digital ba or printed talaga tayo. So basta yun yung option sa formatting. Another one is element naman. Siyempre, ang ating mga teachers ay used na sa paggawa ng portfolio. Of course, we have the cover or title page, di ba? Pagandahan pa nga. And then we have the table of contents. That included after the title page or cover to help readers navigate the portfolio. So, self-explanatory naman. Short annotations. Ano po ito? This is the highlight the demonstration of progress in the implementation of the LDM and the information on the relevant strand in which the artifacts contribute to. So, sa illustration po sa figure 1, yan po ay magbibigay sa inyo ng idea how to have the annotation. For example, name of artifact, MOBs on daily lesson plan or weekly learning plan, yung image, and then annotation. Ano po uli yung annotation? Ito yung nagbibigay that which you think significant effect to you as maybe as LAC leader or what's your role in this LDM. Siguro ganun yung ilalagay doon sa baba. So alam niyo naman yung pag-annotate kasi meron naman kayong RPMS. So close to that. Okay? The other one is submission is scheduled April to July 2021. So it's very timely to discuss with you this guide. Coordinate with your regional office or SDO, LDM program management team for the specific date. Siguro maglalabas yung ating SDO for the specific timeline for the submission. Artifacts can be gathered throughout the school year. Why? Kasi nga, di ba nung nag-LDM, meron tayong implementation. Siyempre, during the implementation, we are expected to gather MOBs. So that is all throughout the school year. So, ngayon medyo patapos na, so dapat meron na talaga tayong na-gather na MOBs. The other one is Practicum Portfolio Raters and Evaluation for Managers shall follow the same system used in the submission of pre-implementation outputs. They may be used the drivers, focal persons, and procedures in the collection and consolidation of outputs and evaluation forms. Napakadali na lang nito sa LAC natin kasi ginawa na nila ito, yung pagpo-collect ng mga outputs at nilagay sa drives. Alam na alam ng mga master teachers ito, which is our LAC leader. Okay? In the evaluation form shall follow a similar consolidation structure as pre-implementation. Evaluators shall record portfolio score using individual reports, while form managers shall consolidate results into a list of completers. The evaluation form for a specific job group are as follows. So, sa individual report, accomplished by the respective evaluators ito. Sa LDM Form 1, yun po ay para sa LDM Portfolio Evaluation of School Heads. Yung LDM Form 2P naman, LDM for Portfolio Evaluation of Supervisors. And LDM Form 3.1, ito na nga po yung ating LDM Portfolio Evaluation of LAC Leaders. Again, yun yung mga MTs natin, mga head teachers or senior teachers. LDM Form 3.2P, that is the LDM Portfolio Evaluation of Teachers. So, meron ding list of completers, of course, to be accomplished yan ng ating form managers. And then the LDM Form 4P, list of LDM Portfolio completers. So, all the forms shall be downloaded at this link. Hindi ko na po babasahin yun. So, sa presentation naman, optional po ito. Pwede namang magkaroon ng presentation. Evaluators may hold a practicum portfolio conference with its LDM participant where he or she present his or her outputs and reflection. Evaluators are also encouraged to facilitate a conversation on what the presenter has just shared. This individual portfolio presentation conference may take 20 to 30 minutes. It could be done virtually or in person, subject to the guidelines issued by the local government unit. So, again, this is optional. Bakit po gagawin natin to? Of course, we can siguro benchmark the practice of preparing the LDM portfolio. Okay? Kagaya nung ginawa natin din nung una. Then, let's proceed to the content. Ito na po yung specific content for the LAC Leaders Portfolio. First is, again, nakalagay dyan, required. May dalawa po tayong uri, required and self-selected. First is MOB or means of verification on providing technical assistance to colleagues about giving feedback to learners. Remarks. You may include any performance monitoring or coaching form or photo documentation to show proof of coaching and mentoring colleagues about giving feedbacks to learners. In the annotation, you will highlight the strategies you shared with your colleague on providing feedback to learners' performance output. So again, ginagawa na ito lagi natin. Hindi na po ito bago sa atin. Ang pinagkaiba nga lang talaga, tayo ay nasa may online, may modular dahil nga tayo nasa pandemic. Okay? Ano po ang PPST strand doon? Feedback to improve learning. So, yun po ang hagip na strand noon. Another MOB is the COT rating. You may include photo documentation of the portions of the lesson plan about teaching strategies used by a colleague to respond to the needs of the learner or learners in difficult circumstances. That is under 3.4, learners in difficult circumstances. Another one is the MOB on providing feedback to colleagues on the development and use of learning resources, such as self-learning materials or modules, activity sheets, etc. You may include any performance monitoring coaching or photo documentation to show qualitative feedback to learning resources developed by colleagues. In the annotation, you may include emphasizing the advice you gave for them to properly select, organize, develop, and use the learning resource. That is under teaching and learning resources, including ICT, in the PPEST strand. Okay? Another artifact is the lesson plan. Example is the DLP, DLL, WSLP, weekly learning plan, WLL, or lesson. You may include 2 to 3 lesson plans from different quarters to show the improvements you made in creating them. So that is under 3.4, learners in difficult circumstances, and planning and management of teaching and learning process. Okay. Another is the exemplars and the likes. So in the annotation, you can highlight the parts of the lesson plan in which you focus during your learning session with colleagues. So that is under learning outcomes aligned with learning competencies. Design, selection, so pwedeng under that, design, selection, organization, and utilization of assessment strategies. Another MOBs on professional engagement with colleagues. So, ano dito, pwede, photo documentation of socially distanced in-person or online synchronous LAC session. So, pwedeng ganun. LDM-related LAC chat, text messenger, Viber kung meron. So, kung ano pa man yun. Faculty meetings, and then in-service training. So, yan ang pwede dito. And that is under professional links with colleagues. That's 7.3 of the Philippine Professional Standard for Teachers. Another one is the MOBs on engaging key stakeholders in the teaching learning process. You may include photo documentation of conversation with parents, guardians through chat, text, video conference. So yun ang pwede dito. Another one is parents dropping of modules at designated school boxes. So dapat yon may picture tayo sa mga ganong senaryo. So, pwede yan dito. Blur names and photos of parents to protect their privacy. So, let us be reminded of Data Privacy Act of 2012. And then, that is under communication of learners' needs, progress and achievements to key stakeholders. And engagement of parents and wider school community in the educative process. Then, you should have a reflective summary. So, ano po ba ang ilalagay dito? This reflective essay should answer the question, do you feel that this collection of work really reflects your abilities and what you have achieved this year through the LDM course? Why or why not? And then your reflection should describe your personal experience in implementing distance LDM. Show depth of analysis and synthesis of this experience and relate it to professional standard and to your professional and personal development goals. So ito po yung guide ninyo para magkaroon ng reflective summary. That is under professional reflection and learning to improve practice. So, yun lang po ang nilalaman ng ating LDM portfolio. And I'll present to you now the percentage of how we can rate or how we can rate the portfolio. First is the demonstration of progress of LDM, that's 30%. Quality of reflection, 25%. Demonstration of professional standards, that's 20%. Language and overall presentation of the output, that's 15%. Organization, 5%. And then timeliness, 5%. A total of 100%. That would be, I think, all about LAC, portfolio for LAC leaders. I would like to end this quote with this session with the quote, there is a potential risk to effective implementation if the correct support is not provided and the capacity of a school or school education as a whole to implement reform is not assessed. With that, I would like to say thank you at magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Kung may question po, pwede naman po. Okay? Thank you po.
Thank you very much, Sir Sokal, for sharing your expertise and knowledge. And now let's move on to the next topic, which is Practicum Portfolio Guide and Evaluation Forms for Teachers, to be discussed by our EPS in English, Dr. Imelda V. Bukirin.
Okay, before I begin, I would like to greet first the school officials, the SDO officials headed by Dr. Loretta Vito Recampo, Dr. Arturo A. Tolentino, the Assistant Schools Division Superintendent, and to our chief, Mr. Librado F. Torres. To the principals, fellow supervisors, teachers, good afternoon. So, Sir Eric, can we have the presentation? So this afternoon, I will take charge on the presentation of Practicum Portfolio Guide for Teachers. So a while ago, you've been listening to Mr. Romy Sokal, who also presented to you a similar process on the preparation of Practicum Portfolio Guide for Teachers. So within a 30-minute period, we will be having a walkthrough, and teacher participants, which I will be catering for this presentation, are expected to demonstrate understanding on Practicum Portfolio LAP Guide, Supplemental Guide in Building LDM Practicum Portfolio, and LDM Practicum Portfolio Content. So let's begin with the walkthrough. So the first topic would be a Practicum Portfolio LAP Guide. You've been practicing LAP sessions, school learning action cells in your respective schools. Am I right? Okay, so you're fully aware on the conduct of school learning action cell, and definitely you are already capable to do LAP sessions. So shall we begin, Ms. Isa, with the next slide? So for the last session, this was previously mentioned by Mr. Sokal. I would just like to highlight, because this is the process that you are going to undergo, it would be similar to the lab leader and the lab facilitator, but your participation to this endeavor, to the lab session, would mean a lot, because the success of the lab session merely depends on the teachers who are involved in the lab session, and that is you, teachers. Okay, not readable, Jess. Okay, I would just like to highlight the part to set the scope and objective of the session. So if the LAC leader, previously mentioned by Sir Sokal, or LAC facilitator, crafted an objective of the session, you are to take part in the attainment of the session objective. So definitely, you are there to help in the attainment of whatever objective was crafted. So I would like to highlight that since this is a practicum portfolio, and the evaluation would mean a lot, you also need to take part in the collection or collation of the MOVs. So to get started, that is about 10 minutes, okay? So you have to save time for each member to provide a copy of supplemental guide. So later on in the part of this session, you'll be guided with that supplemental guide, which will be given to you in advance. Take note. You have to get an advanced copy of the supplemental guide before you go to the lab session so that you will be guided and you will participate actively. So you are expected to do that. So the next would be small group sharing. Okay, small group sharing should be comprised with 3 to 5 members. That is ideal. Can we have the next slide, Miss Isa? Okay, ideally it should be 3 to 5 members for a small group. And then I would just like to highlight the questions raised in this particular part of the lab guide. So you have to think aloud. I would like teachers to think aloud. We are so far, but very near on my screen. So I want you to think aloud that before you have this lab session, okay, you have already gathered MOVs in your practicum portfolio. So that means before attending the lab session, you have gathered already your practicum portfolio. Okay, artifacts or what you call the MOVs you have gathered show your progress. Okay, this is a practicum portfolio, but definitely it's the same as growth portfolio. So having gathered those, you are ready to share your experiences and to share the best output that you have. So let's proceed to the small group report. So done sharing with the small group sharing, this time around within the group, you're going to have a small group report. And who's going to do that? Okay. After the 5 minutes, you discuss within yourself. Miss Isa, can we have the next slide? Okay, group report, assign the speakers which you'll share in the big group. So definitely in a group discussion, you should have a facilitator. Definitely there should be a facilitator. There should be a speaker who's called to be the presenter. And there you're going to have the other one should be a member or a secretariat who's going to take down what happened in that particular group discussion. So a lab facilitator notes down the consolidates and responses and present it to the table to identify and similar and different answers. So within the group, there should be one lab facilitator and teachers who collaboratively work on that. Next. Okay, big group plenaries after the groupings. You try to engage yourself as if we are having a practice in this particular walkthrough. So if you notice, you get started, you group yourself into small group sharing and then a reporting so that the facilitator will be ready for the big group or plenary sharing. So what should be highlighted in the plenary sharing? Why do we need to have a predetermined and self-selected MOVs? Okay, take note of this. This will be similar questions that you're going to encounter when you have the lab session or when you conduct the lab session. So we are giving it to you in advance. So that you will be prepared in the group discussions, especially so in the plenary sharing. How does aligning the MOVs with the professional standards help? How can practicum portfolio building be stress-free? Okay, stress-free. Take note of that. You should not be stressed. It should be a stress-free activity because it will be easier for you once you listen very well to this orientation. What MOVs from the 2020 to 2021 RPMS portfolio can be used in the LDM portfolio, so vice versa. So you can have all those from beginning of the school year to the end of the school year. So what other questions do you have that might need clarification? So these questions, you will tackle all these questions in a big or plenary group sharing. So next, so after that, okay, so big group plenary sharing and the synthesis and action planning this time. So lab facilitator synthesizes the insights shared and understanding gained from reading the supplemental guide. So definitely it will now be the role of the lab facilitator. So as teachers, you are there, you have shared already your insights, so it's time for the lab facilitator to synthesize the insights shared by everyone. So it's a collaborative effort. You join together, you share your thoughts so that in the end, the lab facilitator can now give the insights coming from the group. Then the lab facilitator asks members to identify and help they can give and would need in building their own practicum portfolio and those others. So definitely with the collaboration of each and every one of you, you're going to come up with an exemplar, like a practicum portfolio. So the completion of reports next will be done by the LAC members. LAC members, these are the teachers, complete the engagement report, teachers engagement report, while the LAC facilitator completes the the leaders LAC session report. So take note, teachers, you are to complete teachers engagement report. So the duration of that particular LAC session that you are going to have is 50 to 60 minutes. Okay, so next, Ms. Isa. So I'll be presenting to you a similar supplemental guide in building your LDM practicum portfolio. If Sir Romy caters the LAC leaders or LAC facilitator, what I'm going to cater are those teachers. So teachers, listen very well. I would just like to highlight the supplemental guide in building your LDM practicum portfolio. It's a similar presentation. Okay, so remember, the first column lists of artifacts that are aligned to the daily outputs that you create during the course of the year. So from October to June. So if you have those MOVs, artifacts are seen as MOVs, you have to create a course. I mean to say create this course of the year. So I think you have all of those because you've been used of having the MOVs. Second column describes the artifact to be collected, while the third column indicates the professional standard that are met by the respective output. So later, I will be presenting similar table presented by Sir Romy because it's a process that you need to undergo. Similar process. This is just a reiteration for further enlightenment. So this provides information how LDM outputs align with the school year 2020 to 2021 RPMS portfolio, which can guide you in determining outputs you can include in your IP CRF. Okay, next, Ms. Isa. Okay, so how are you going to select or the LDM practicum artifacts? Required artifacts or artifacts that you have to include in the portfolio. Okay, this was mentioned already. Self-directed artifacts are those that you might consider having in your portfolio to satisfy the criteria used in assessing it. Selection of artifacts would be a consideration that you need to do also if you think these are needed. Okay, this is not an exhaustive list. Take note of words or sentences in bold letters. This is not an exhaustive list. You may add artifacts from your work that better illustrates your learning and application of the course. Use Practicum Portfolio Rubric to guide your artifact selection. Next. Okay, formatting guidelines is the same. Digital submission may be collated in a slide deck. Okay, just have it read. A digital electronic submission is encouraged to reduce physical contact during the pandemic and its portfolio management. So definitely you have those digital images that you have used or stored in a slide or in a PowerPoint. This might be the resources, the learning resources that you have used. And these are ready for submission. They are categorized under digital. Okay, printed submission are compiled in a folder or an envelope. Okay, next. Okay, so these are the elements on how to include, what to include in your portfolio. First, the cover page or title page. Similar to a book, if you ask your students to have a portfolio, this was discussed in our previous engagement. Okay, it should contain the title of the portfolio. So if it's Practicum, LDM Practicum portfolio, that should contain or be included in the title page or cover page. The table of contents is very significant. Okay, this will lead the readers to navigate the portfolio with or without scanning the content of the portfolio page by page. They can navigate the portfolio. They know the content because of the presentation of the table of contents. And then short annotations that highlight the demonstration of progress in the implementation of the LDM and the information on relevant strands which will, the artifacts contribute to. So these are formatting guidelines that you really need to know in order to come up with a very good output or an exemplar LDM practicum portfolio. So why are we presenting this all to you? Because we expect you to have a very nice output and excellent at that. Okay, next. So this is presented also a while ago. So sample portfolio page layout. So if you can do it better, definitely name of the artifacts or the MOVs. I'll be presenting similar sample to this. All you have to do is put the image, this and the annotation, the comments, and the explanation for doing so. Okay. The practical portfolio is similar to growth portfolio when we talk about the types of portfolios. So definitely, if there is a progress, you can include that in the annotation. Okay, those are descriptors to show the progress. Okay, next part, Ms. Isa. So we shall now have the submission. Let's skip that because that was discussed already by Sir Rocky, but the emphasis will be given in the later part of this engagement as to Ms. Jessie. When is the submission or the due date for all of this? Okay, take note the artifacts should be all throughout the school year. Okay, next, Ms. Isa. Okay, it's the same. Next, the content. Let's proceed to the content, which will dwell on what the teachers are going to present. Okay, let's have the next slide, Miss Isa. Okay, let's have the content. Okay, so this content will be for the teachers. What are you going to prepare? The required and the self-selected. So let's proceed with the required content of your portfolio. So the first will be LDM artifact. These are the individual learning monitoring plans. Do you have this, teachers? Okay, I don't see the answers. Sir Eric, do they have? All of you have individual learning monitoring plans. So what are you going to include? You may include 2 to 3 individual learning monitoring plans to show the improvement you made in creating the ILMP. So definitely, there should be an indication of progress. You choose a particular ILMP that you have created, which shows the progress. Okay, highlight the annotation, compare the parts of the ILMP in which you made adjustment. And then ILMP could be for the same student or for different learners. It could be for the same student, but for different learners. So take note of this, teachers. What PPST strand is this? 3.1, learners' gender needs, strengths, interests, and experiences. So focus on the strength, probably the needs and interest. If you can go beyond, probably get a diverse presentation of the ILMP, learners' needs, and then strengths and interests or experiences to come up with the three best output. Always choose the best output when you do your portfolio. Okay, that represents yourself. Next, so another content would be lesson plans. The artifact are the lesson plans, the DLP, DLL, work home learning plan, and so on. These are lesson exemplars and the likes. So you may include again 2 to 3 lesson plans from different quarters to show the improvements you made in creating them. So there should be a progress. Please choose a lesson plan that shows progress from the beginning to the end. So the annotation highlights or compare the parts of the lesson in which you made adjustments. You may cover the following. So competencies, the learning objectives, the performance tasks, and the learner's output. So to come up, definitely for us, this goes with the English teachers, but if it's across learning area, you may adapt. You should come up with the curriculum, that means the learning objective, the instruction, where performance is there, and then the assessment where learning outputs is also included. So SIA. Take note of the SIA. So curriculum, the learning competencies or objectives, the performance or the delivery of instruction, and the learning outputs or the assessment. Okay, so let's have the third column. You will notice there that there are phrases that are in black. These are priority strengths. So when you see in the third column that there are phrases or topics in black ink or mark, these are the priority strengths that you need to cover. These are essentials and these are required, and you need to prioritize all of this. Say learners in difficult circumstances. Okay, that's a priority strength, I mean. And then 4.2, learning outcomes aligned with the learning objectives. So definitely, when you do your lesson plan, it's from beginning to end. So you have to come up with activities that are aligned to the attainment of the objective. Most importantly, the learning outcomes or assessment. So you try to be vigilant on the attainment of the learning objective and the competencies. Next, Ms. Isa, teacher-made modified learning resources. I know most of you have come up with your own contextualized learning resources, and definitely you also have a division for those who are writers in modules and functional reading activity sheets and other activity sheets that you've created. You can put it here. You may include the following learning resources: modular distance learning, 2 sample modules, online distance learning, screenshots, or 2 online lessons, presentations, quizzes using collaborative technologies, Padlet, Google Classroom, etc. So definitely, I've observed most of the classes and teachers are equipped in development of lessons with this technology. Okay, so teaching and learning resources, including ICT. In the annotation, highlight, compare the parts and the learning resources where you made adjustments. So that's the importance of annotation. You compare and give your comments. Okay, comments and justification or explanation, because this is a process or growth portfolio. Okay, next, Ms. Isa. Certificates of participation in any professional development, PD activities. So you will notice in the third column, there is professional leads with colleague. So you may include certificates received with PD activities, 2 to 3. Why 2 to 3? But if you can come up with more, that is better. This is just a minimum activities that you need to include. So in the annotation, briefly explain whether these were part or not part of your original PD goals in the development plan. I like this part. Okay. Why? State the reason why and how you applied what you have learned in your work as a teacher. So take note, you'll be guided with this material on how to do the annotation. So there are instances that we plan, but definitely some do not or we do not achieve those plans. So you can include this is what the target I have for professional development. It didn't happen. Why? And then you apply what you learned in a different perspective. Okay. So next, learning resources. Next. Okay, a reflective summary. So we're done. We're almost done. Okay, reflective essay should answer the question. Do you feel that this collection of work really reflects your ability? And what have you achieved this year through LDM course? Why or why not? This is required. This is a strand that is required. So your reflection should describe your personal experience in implementing distance learning delivery modalities, show depth of analysis and synthesis of which experience and relate to its professional standards and to your professional and personal development goal. So it's a reflection of yourself. It's a reflection of what you have done. It'll be easier for you if it's coming from within. Okay, you just throw it within the experience that you encountered during the preparation of this practical portfolio, and definitely you can write this reflective essay. Okay, I think that is all, Miss Isa. Can we have the next slide? Self-selected. So we have required and we also have self-selected. So let's have the self-selected. These are within your choice. Okay, for self-selected, next, it's for you to choose for self-selected, but prioritize those feedback to improve learning. Okay, so you may include a photo or documentation of a conversation through a chat, text, video conference about class requirements. So they have these teachers notes or messages as feedback to their submitted output. I think you have it print screen. Photo documentation is needed. Kumustahan consultation sessions with the learners. Take note that blur names and photos of students, parents, or guardians to protect their privacy. So MOVs of engaging learners for progress and achievement. This is self-selected. Okay, but there's an emphasis that you should come up with the feedback to improve the learning. Okay, next. Okay, MOVs for professional engagement with colleagues. Okay, you may include a photo documentation of socially distanced in person, online or synchronous. Lab sessions conducted, LBM related lab chats, text, messenger, Viber, etc. Faculty meetings, in-service training. This is for professional links with colleagues. Next. Okay, still on self-selected, MOVs on engaging key stakeholders in teaching learning process. This time, you may include photo documentation of conversation with parents or guardian through chat, text, video conference. Parents dropping off modules at designated school boxes. Okay. There's an emphasis again, blur names and photos of parents and guardians to protect their privacy. So what should be focused here? Engagement of parents and a wider school community in the educative process. So communication of learners, also progress and achievement to the key stakeholders. So we'll have the next part. Okay, that ends the presentation. Thank you, everyone. I hope if you have question in mind, please reserve those questions. We have the next presenter. Maybe we can answer those after. So thank you, and again, good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bukarin. And now let's now move on to our next topic, which is Practicum Portfolio Guide and Evaluation Form for Schoolhead to be discussed by our EPS in Science, Dr. Maripas P. Mendoza. Take it away, ma'am.
And before I start, I just would like to say good afternoon to our SDS, Dr. Torre Campo, to our OICA SDS, Dr. Tolentino, to our CIT Chief, who is with us, Sir Bob, to our SEOD Chief, Dr. Gaza, and to all the participants of this orientation. So, good afternoon, everyone. So, I will be sharing with you the Learning Delivery Modality course for the school heads. Miss Isa, please. Okay, so this is the Practicum Portfolio Guide and Evaluation Forms for school heads. Before I go on, since the guide is just the same process from the teachers to the supervisors, I will just give a wrap up of it. Since the school heads and everybody has already their lab groups, so you will just talk within your groups. So ang school heads po, we have your lab groups by cluster. So you will just be sharing among your groups. But the intention of this orientation is actually for us to collate our MOVs na, or the artifacts that we are talking about. Okay, Miss Isa, please. Next slide. Okay, so the school heads had their LDM tagged as the LDM1. Okay, so this is the supplemental guide in building the LDM practicum portfolio for the school head. So as we all know, the portfolio is a tool that can be used to record and reflect one's learning. So the portfolio is already a collection of our artifacts, or it's already the collection of our MOVs, or the means of verification. Okay, it is in this portfolio that we will be having our essential artifacts that we had with the LDM1 implementation from the module 1 up to the last module. Okay, so next, I will not be dwelling on that anymore. Okay, I would like to focus more on what are the portfolio artifacts that the school heads will be preparing. Okay, so we have two types actually of portfolio artifacts. Miss Isa, please. Okay, so the LDM practicum portfolio artifacts fall into two categories. We have the required and the self-selected. So when we talk of the required artifacts, these are artifacts that you have to include in the portfolio, as this covers the standard work that you do in the LDM. So we have the different modules that we have during the implementation of the LDM1 LDM1. Okay, the Learning Delivery Modality Course 1. So all we just have to do is to collate all those MOVs, to collate all those artifacts, and that will comprise the required artifacts. Okay, then we have also what we call the self-selected artifacts. So these are now those that you might consider having in your portfolio to satisfy the criteria used in assessing it. So if you notice during the two discussions that we had with Sir Sokaw and Dr. Bukirin, so they have presented to you how to align these artifacts into our PPST standards that will comprise our IPCRF. So these are already the artifacts that we have to prepare, or that we have to complete our RPMS flow. Okay, next, Miss Isa. Okay, so ito lang, this is just a reminder for all of us. This is not an exhaustive list. So you may add artifacts from your work that better illustrates your learning and application of the course. So the guide that we will be giving you is just a guide, okay? But if you think there are other artifacts that you need to include in your portfolio, then you can do so. Okay, next
Ms. Isa. So this is now the LDM portfolio guidelines. So in this next slides, we will be showing you the following. Okay, the table guide. So we have 3 columns on the table guide. The first column will be the list of artifacts that are aligned to the daily outputs that you create during the course of the year. Ito yung LDM1 implementation. Then the second column describes the artifact to be collected. So guided po tayo dito lahat. Then the third column, it shows or indicates the professional standards that are met by the respective output. Okay, so it provides information into how the LDM outputs align with the school year 2020-2021 RPMS portfolio. So which can be guide in determining which outputs you can include in your IPCRF. So during the orientation for the teachers, if I remember it, may nagtanong po na teacher noon, ito bang mga ginagawa namin sa LDM ay makakatulong sa amin doon sa aming IPCRF. So this is already the answer to that. Kasi meron na po tayong alignment of the LDM with our IPCRF. Okay, Ms. Isa, next please. So there could be other strands in which the artifacts may contribute to the attainment but are not indicated in the table. So if you think po that in some of the strands in the IPCRF, you need to include the artifacts that you already have, then you can do so. So it is not limited. So kung sa tingin po natin, kailangan natin yung artifact na yon doon sa ibang IPCRF strand na hindi po naka-indicate sa table na ipapakita ko po mamaya, then pwede po natin ilagay yon as long as we use the annotation. Kasi doon naman po tayo sa annotation magpapaliwanag bakit siya naka-include doon sa strand na yon. Or bakit nyo siya in-include doon sa strand na yon. Okay? Next slide, please. Okay, these are now the required artifacts. Okay, so we have the LDM implementation plan. If you still remember, we have if I'm not mistaken, we have the LDM implementation plan. It's in module 2. I'm not just so sure of that. Okay, so the LDM implementation plan, it should contain information or updates about the status of the quarter 1 to quarter 4 activities indicated. Meron na po tayo niyan, may ginawa po tayo niyan during the implementation of our course. Then it can be aligned with the strand 1.2, which is about school planning and implementation. So pagka po tayo ay gumawa ng ating portfolio, i-duplicate na po natin para meron tayong portfolio for the LDM. At the same time, meron na rin po tayong itinatabi for our IPCRF. Para pag naggawa na rin tayo ng IPCRF, hindi na rin po tayo mahihirapan. Okay, then the second artifact or the second MOV that should be included in your portfolio is the LDM Decision Tree. Naalala nyo yung ating fill up na may mga cell na yellow na kailangan mong lagyan ng number so that you can proceed to the next drive. So ito po yon, LDM Decision Tree. So there could be several versions or iterations of the decision tree to reflect the changes in the modalities chosen by the learners. But take note po, yung LDM, if you still remember, the LDM decision tree, we have to do it po by quarter. So by now, kailangan po meron na tayo hanggang quarter 4. So yun po yung dapat po kasi by quarter siya ginawa, di ba? Pero ang ginawa lang kasi natin, nung in-introduce sa atin, kaya po ako nakikinatin kasi naranasan ko siya. Okay? So, ang ginawa po kasi natin noon, nung in-introduce to, just the quarter 1. So, nag-backtrack po tayo. So, in this LDM decision tree, yun po yung gagawin natin siya up to quarter 4. Anyway, papalitan lang naman po yung mga inputs doon sa cells. Okay? And where can we align the LDM decision tree of the LDM course 1? In the PPST or in the strand for school heads. So it can be aligned in strand 1.4, which is about research and innovation, and also in strand 1.6, which is the learner's voice or the learner voice. Okay, kasi parang survey po yan, yung LDM decision tree na yan. Okay, next slide please, Ms. Ice. Okay, another artifact which is a required artifact because it is included in our course. This is the LDM Readiness Assessment results, the LDM Readiness Action Plan, which shows the baseline or the pre-implementation, and the midline action plan. Okay, so the baseline or the pre-implementation readiness assessment test is the one included in the course pack, while the midline readiness assessment test is the one you answered in February of 2021. Kung naalala nyo po, meron itong form na naka-include sa ating course noon. Okay? And where can we align it? It can be aligned also in strand 1.4, which is also about which is the research and innovation, and it can be further aligned in strand 2.1, which is the records management, and 2.6, which is the emerging opportunities and challenges. Okay? Another required document or another required artifact is the M&E plan or the monitoring and evaluation plan. So there could be several versions or iterations of the M&E plan to reflect the adjustments you made. So yun, meron din po tayo nito, if I'm not also mistaken, it's module 4, 5. Okay, and this can be aligned in strand 1.7, which is the monitoring and evaluation processes and tools. Okay, Ms. Aiza, next slide, please. Okay, then another artifact which is required in our portfolio is the technical assistance plan for teachers. This TA plan should contain information or updates about the status of the Q1 to Q4 activities indicated. You may include photo documentation or activity reports of school-initiated or sponsored professional development activities. Eh, marami po tayo niyan, yung mga ano natin, plans for inset, plans for locks. Okay? Then it can be aligned with the strand 3.2, which is teaching standards and pedagogies, strand 3.5, learning assessment, and strand 4.5, which is learning and development of school personnel. Okay, next slide, please, Ms. Aiza. Okay, then a required document. Ito, kung naalala nyo, masyado tayong na dito sa mga reflective questions na ang dami-dami nating output, yun pala, ang i-rate ay yung ating mga answers with our reflective, yung reflections, yung ating reflective summary. Okay, so this is a required document. So for the school heads po, our reflective summary, the question that we must be answering after we collate our MOVs to come up with the portfolio is this one. So the question for you is, do you feel that this collection of work really reflects your abilities and what you have achieved this year through the LDM course? Why or why not? So in your reflection, you should describe your personal experience in implementing distance learning delivery modalities, show depth of analysis and synthesis of this experience, and relate it to professional standards and to your professional and personal development goals. And the answer to this reflective question can be used in your IPCRF in strand 4.2, which is about professional reflection and learning. Okay, next slide, Ms. Aiza. Okay, here are now the self-selected artifacts or the self-selected MOVs. Bakit nga ba siya self-selected? So these are artifacts aligned to the implementation of special curricular programs. Example, yung madrasa education, indigenous people's education, special interest programs, and so forth. So may also be included as self-selected artifacts in the LDM Practicum portfolio. Pero ano na nga ba yung sinasabi kanina na self-selected artifacts? Okay, so yan yung mga you think you might consider which is not included in the implementation of the course 1, but you think it is an important MOV for you to show your progress as a school head or to show your work as a school head. So ito po yung mga self-selected artifacts. And some of these are the following. So we have the class organization, load distribution of teachers, and supervision of teachers. So here you may include the following: sample of teacher work plan, sample of teacher cluster shows modular distance learning and online distance learning assignments if school uses different modalities, class organization documents, MOV showing how classes are organized, sectioned in the LDM, and sample of teacher schedules, or pictures of online faculty meetings. Okay, these artifacts can also be used in your IPCRF in Strand 2.4, which is about management of staff. Next slide, please, Miss Aiza. Okay, then another self-selected artifact is the risk management plans. Okay, in this one, you may include any of the following: the adopted COVID-19 precautions in school, guidelines, pamphlets, memos, yung ating pong mga mental health activities, marami po niyan, yung ating homeroom, yung homeroom activities, yung mga activity proposals natin, marami po niyan. Okay? Disaster response efforts and fundraising activities. Dito sa disaster response efforts, yung ating mga activity proposals to procure yung ating mga COVID-19 related materials. Okay? And those artifacts can be used also in Strand 2.5, which is about school safety for disaster preparedness, mitigation, and resiliency. Next slide, please, Ms. Aiza. Okay, another artifact for this, self-selected. MOVs on LR development, example, module writing, module quality assurance, evaluation of modular distance learning or online distance learning lesson plans, and our weekly home learning plans. Diba? Yung lesson plan kasi natin ngayon, it's the weekly home learning plans. So in this artifact or MOV, you may include any of the following: comparison of first quarter versus the latest quarter modules, or the you compare the first and the second, second and the third and the fourth. Okay, then samples of evaluated modules, samples of evaluated weekly home learning plans, contextualization of modules. Okay, ito siguro we can give you yung mga contextualized budget of work ng bawat subject, then quality assurance processes of modules, and samples of online distance learning lesson plans. Okay, and these MOVs can be aligned in Strand 2.6, emerging opportunities and challenges, and Strand 3.2, teaching standards and pedagogies. Okay, next slide, Ms. Aiza, please. Okay, then we also have to include as self-selected artifact MOVs on learning assessment and what are these. So any of the following: you have the quarterly scores, the periodic exam implementation, MOVs showing innovations in assessment strategies, school-wide tools used by the school to assess learners. Diba? Examples ito yung ating pong summative sa division. We have that. Okay. Then this can be included in Strand 3.5, learning assessment. And also if you have your interventions in school for the formative and summative assessment of our learners, then this can be included in this artifact. Okay. Next, Ms. Aiza. Okay. Then we have MOV showing how school heads engage learners, parents, teachers, and stakeholders. Okay, so you may include any of the following. So you have evidence of communication efforts, like in the Facebook announcements. We have the school website. Usually in that site, we give our announcements, so we can use that. Or sample of text blast to parents, video conferencing with parents and stakeholders. Stakeholder partnerships. So MOV of this, donation drives with organizations or community. We have the Brigada. So that's why it can be, it can be used in here. Examples of LDM-related physical communication materials like tarpaulins, posters, pamphlets, or information packets. And these MOVs or artifacts can be used in strand 5.5, which is community engagement. Okay, next slide, please, Miss Aiza. Okay, formatting guidelines. This was shown a while ago by our two speakers also, but let me just reiterate it. So the LDM practicum portfolio can be submitted in either printed or digital form. If you submit in for digital submissions, may be collated in a slide deck. Okay, we can use Google Slides or PowerPoint, stored in a folder or other digital forms that the focal from the SDO may provide. So I think they will be giving updates regarding this later on. A digital or electronic submission is encouraged to reduce physical contact during the pandemic and ease of portfolio management. Then for printed submissions, it may be compiled in a folder or envelope. Okay? The following elements also have to be included in your portfolio. So ito po yung kaninang pinakitang parang template. So it includes the cover or title page, the table of contents included after the title page or the cover to help readers navigate the portfolio. So yun naman po yung table of contents natin, ang nilalaman po nun, kung ano din yung pinakita po naming nilalaman dapat ng inyong portfolio, the required and the self-selected artifacts. Then short annotations. So the annotations highlight the demonstration of progress in the implementation of the LDM and the information on the relevant strands in which the artifacts contribute to. Okay, so next slide is Aiza. So ito po yon, the sample portfolio page layout. So ito po yung nasa loob. So the name of the artifact, the professional standard or the strand that it is aligned to, then you put the image, then write the annotation. So why is it that the artifact is said to be aligned to that strand? So yun po yung sa annotation. Okay? Then, next slide, Ms. Aiza. Okay, the mode of submission or the schedule of the submission, which is already given a while ago. So, July, there will be an update later on for the specific dates. This will be discussed later by Ma'am Jessie, I think. So, there's already specific schedules for us to submit our portfolio. Okay? So, yun nga po, this is a collection of the artifacts or MOVs from the start of the school year. Next, okay, the practicum portfolio raters and evaluation form managers shall follow the same system used in the submission of pre-implementation outputs. They may use the same drives. So I think the focal person will be deciding on this, okay, on how to collect and consolidate the outputs and the evaluation forms. Okay, Ms. Aiza, please. Now, let me just show you the evaluation tayo muna, Ma'am Aiza. So, this is how you will be evaluated by, I think, your PSDSS. The school heads are evaluated, if I'm not mistaken, sir. They are evaluated by their PSDSS, and the PSDSS are further evaluated by the chief. Okay, Ms. Aiza, please click yung hyperlink of the evaluation. Napakita naman po kanina ni Sir Romy yung percentage, but I just would like to walk you through the form. Ms. Aiza, naka-hyperlink siya doon sa evaluation. Please click yung word na evaluation muna. Kailangan naka-slideshow siya. Slideshow. Miss Aiza, kung ayaw, meron dun sa folder na evaluation tool, pwedeng yun na. Pero babalik ka rin mamaya dun sa slide. Ayan. Okay po. Pwede natin siyang lakihan. So, this is the tool used by your evaluators. Okay, sige po. So, how are you evaluated? So, we have the following indicators. Demonstration of progress of LDM implementation. You will be given 30% for this. Okay, at meron po tayong rubrics for this one. Okay, then another indicator to be rated is the quality of your reflection. So you were given the reflective question a while ago. So yung the quality of your answer for the reflection will be given 25%. Then demonstration of professional standards. This will be from the annotations that you will be including in your portfolio. It will be given 20%. Language and overall presentation of the output, it will be given 15%. And then the organization of your portfolio, it's 5%. And the timeliness of submission of the portfolio is also 5%. So this is the evaluation form that the PSDSS use for the school heads. Okay? Can we now go back to the slide, Miss Aiza? Sorry. Okay, so the presentation po, it's optional. I think pag-uusapan pa po yan ng ating mga focal person na sana nga wala na. Kasi, okay, Miss Aiza, please. Okay, the presentation, so I just would like to share this, baka lang sakali. Evaluators may hold a Practicum Portfolio Conference with each LDM participant where he or she presents his or her outputs and reflection. Evaluators are also encouraged to facilitate a conversation on what the presenter has just shared. The individual portfolio presentation conference may take 20 to 30 minutes. It could be done virtually or in person, subject to the guidelines issued by the local government unit. Kasi nga, we have to follow yung protocols for this COVID-19. Okay, Miss Aiza, with that po, I just would like to say, gaano man po karami ang ating trabaho, everything will be okay. Patapos na po ang ating school year at maganda po na tayo ay naging resilient sa lahat ng ating ginagawa. So with that, thank you very much. So questions will be entertained later po after all the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mendoza. Yun nga. So everything will be okay. So before we go to our last two topic, ang attendance po natin is nasa ating comments na po. And nandiyan na rin po sa link. Nakikita niyo po, nagka-flash yung link po sa ating screen. So yun po yung attendance for today. So and now let's move on to our last two topic, which is the Practicum Portfolio Guide and Evaluation Forms for Supervisor, to be discussed by our PSDS, Dr. Rosalie Arcondes. Take it away, ma'am.
To the SDO executives, headed by our highly respected Schools Division Superintendent, Dr. Loretta Vito Recampo, to the OIC Assistant Schools Division Superintendent, Dr. Arturo A. Tolentino, to the CID Chief Education Supervisor, Sir Librado F. Torres, to the SGOD Chief Education Supervisor, Dr. Miri Nagasa, to fellow supervisors who functioned as LDM instructional coaches, school heads who performed as LDM instructional leaders, to the assistant principals, master teachers, and department heads who comprise the group of LDM LAC leaders, and most of all, to our teachers who successfully completed the LDM2 course. Good afternoon. I am tasked to present to you the Practicum Portfolio Guide and Evaluation Form for Supervisors. Next slide, please. Let us begin by looking into the Practicum Portfolio Lab Guide that is divided into 6 components, broken down as follows. So there are 6 components: the getting started, small group sharing, small group report, big group or plenary sharing, big group or plenary synthesis and action planning. And the last component is the completion of reports. All these are expected to be accomplished within 50 to 60 minutes or within an hour. Under the getting started, okay, the following activities are the LAC facilitators can use this time to remind the LAC group on norms, do a short icebreaker or conduct a kumustahan session with the members. Set the scope and objective of the session, and then specify that this LAC will only focus on the ongoing LDM practicum portfolio building. The LAC facilitator should set that this session will build on the last pre-implementation module, which is about the portfolio building. Specifically, it will help them clarify concerns on what to include in their practicum portfolio and how it will be evaluated. To save time, each member will be provided with a copy of the supplemental guide for them to study in advance. They will be asked to identify the MOVs in the list that they already have. So for the second component, the small group sharing, next slide. Yes, that's it. The LAC facilitator will divide the group into groups with 3 to 5 members. Only if possible, group the members based on learning areas or grade levels taught. For example, all the science teachers together, the math teachers, the English teachers, the primary level teachers, or the kindergarten teachers. Give them at least 5 minutes to discuss within the small group and another 5 to 10 minutes for sharing with a big group. Questions for this small group sharing are as follows. Have you started gathering MOVs in your practicum portfolio? What artifacts or MOVs you have gathered show your progress in applying what you learned in the LDM course? And then another question, what artifacts or MOVs for your LDM practicum portfolio do you have in common? Groups will assign one speaker to share their answers with the next LAC component, which is the big group. Please take note that small groups can be held as breakouts on platforms that allow this, platforms such as Zoom, Facebook, Viber, WhatsApp, or others, if the face-to-face LAC sessions are still prohibited. Next slide, please. Eyes up. Next slide, please. Small group report. Assigned speaker will share their answer with the big group. Each small group will be given 2 minutes to present their answers with their big group. And LAC facilitator notes down and consolidates the responses and presents them in a table to identify similar and dissimilar answers. This will take about 10 minutes. For the big group or plenary sharing, next slide, please. Thank you. LAC facilitators ask members of these MOVs if these MOVs satisfactorily document the learning, growth, and development on LDM implementation over time. LAC facilitators start the conversation on the pre-work, reading materials supplementary guide, in building a developmental or learning portfolio. To highlight the key learnings in the lesson, the LAC facilitator may use the following synthesis questions. The first question, why do we need to have predetermined and self-selected MOVs? How does aligning the MOVs with the professional standards help? How can practicum portfolio building be stress-free? What MOVs from 2020 to 2021 RPMS portfolio can be used in my LDM portfolio or vice versa? And what other questions do you have that might need clarification? This undertaking will last for 15 minutes. For the big group or plenary synthesis and action planning, the LAC facilitator synthesizes insights shared and understanding gained from reading the supplemental guide. The LAC facilitators ask the members to identify the help they can give or would need in building their own practicum portfolio and those of others. LAC facilitators set a schedule for coaching or peer coaching session. This will last from 5 to 10 minutes. And the last component is the completion of reports that will take about 2 minutes. This is about the LAC members completing the teacher's engagement report and the LAC facilitators completing the leader's LAC session report. Please take note that this LAC session guide serves only as a guide for the LAC leaders in conducting the LAC session. LAC leaders are still free to merge or modify content of these guide sessions according to their content, schedules, and capabilities. Moving forward. Okay, as I said before, this will take about 50 to 60 minutes. Let's move to the supplemental guide in building LDM practicum portfolio. Next slide, please. In the last LDM pre-implementation module, you have learned that a portfolio is a tool that can be used to record and reflect on one's learning progress. In the LDM course, the practical portfolio you have been building enables you to make connections between the module-based learning experience and how these help you in doing your actual task. Allow me to bring to you the two types of portfolio artifacts, the required artifacts and the self-selected artifacts. Required artifacts are artifacts that you have to include in the portfolio as this covers the standard work that you do in the LDMs. While the self-selected artifacts are those that you might consider having in your portfolio to satisfy the criteria used in assessing it. Artifacts aligned to the implementation of special curricula or program, for example, madrasa education, indigenous peoples education, special interest program, the special education, open high school. These may all be included as self-selected artifacts in the LDM practicum portfolio. And again, as the previous resource speakers reiterated, this is not an exhaustive list. You may add artifacts from your work that better illustrates your learning and application of the course. Use the practicum portfolio rubric to guide your artifact selections. Participating supervisors who have served as LAC leaders in LDM 1 and instructional coaches in LDM 2 shall submit only one practicum portfolio. This portfolio already covers application of learnings in both courses. Moving forward, let us look closely into the required LDM practicum portfolio content. Okay, under required content. Okay. The first column lists the artifacts that are aligned to the daily outputs that you created during the course of the year. The second column describes the artifact to be collected, while the third column that you can see indicates the professional standards that are met by the respective outputs. Please take note that this provides information into how LDM outputs align with the school year 2020-2021 RPMS portfolio, which can guide you in determining which output you can include in your IPCRF. There could other be strands in which the artifacts may contribute to their attainment but are not indicated in the table. So these are just samples, okay? The content of your portfolio will not be limited to this. Okay, let's move to the first two samples. LAC or TA or coaching report under LR management. So what are the artifacts? The photo documentation and regarding modules module development, localization, contextualization. The photo documentation or output regarding module distribution and retrieval. And this falls under the Philippine Professional Standard, Supervisor Standard, Strand 1.5, Learning Resource Management. Another sample, still under the required content. Required LDM practicum portfolio content is the LAP or the TA coaching report under learning management. That includes photo documentation and or output regarding crafting of WHLPs and ILMPs. And then the photo documentation and output related to curriculum innovation, and the photo documentation and or output related to assessment. And this all fall under PPSS Strand 1.1 Curriculum Implementation, 1.2 Curriculum Innovation, 1.3 Curriculum Contextualization, and 1.6 Learning Outcomes Assessment. Next slide, please. More examples. LAC or TA or coaching reports on teacher, school, or school head capacity. So the artifacts may include photo or documentation activity report of the district or division initiated or sponsored professional development activities for teachers that fall under 4.1, which is learning and development of school personnel. And another sample is the lab or technical assistance coaching report on school operations that includes photo or documentation or activity report of the district or division initiated or sponsored professional development activities for school head and the lab sessions with the school heads. So this fall under PPSS 2.2 technical assistance provision, 3.1 support for instructional leadership, 3.4 communities of practice. Next slide, please. Okay. Another is the reflective summary. This reflective essay should answer the question, do you feel that this collection of work really reflects your abilities and what you have achieved this year through the LDM course? Why or why not? Your reflection should describe your personal experience in implementing distance LDMs, show depth of analysis and synthesis of this experience, and relate it to the professional standards and to your professional and personal development goals. And this fall under PPSS Strand 4.4, Professional Reflection and Learning to Improve Practice. After looking into the required LDM practicum portfolio contents, let us look into the self-selected LDM practicum portfolio content. Let me reiterate that artifacts aligned under this are the implementations of the special curriculum program, such as, again, madrasa, IPED, special education, special interest program, special education, open high school, may also be included as self-directed artifacts in the LDM practicum portfolio. Okay, so the samples, the LAC or the TA or the coaching report on household or community capacity. This may include photo documentation or activity report of the district or the division initiated or sponsored capacity building activities for parents, guardians, and other stakeholders. This fall under PPSS Strand 2.4, support for disaster preparedness, mitigation, and resiliency. Another sample. Next slide, please. MOVs on communication with teachers and school heads. You may include photo documentation of in-person online meetings using different communication platforms, memos, video conferencing application. And saan natin makukuha ito? Di po ba tayo ngayon ay merong Google Sheet na fini-fill up or Google Form sa mga CID MOBs? Yun po, pwede na po tayong kumuha doon para ilagay dito. So this fall under PPSS Strand 3.2, Technology-Based Innovation, including ICT. 3.5, Use of Communication Platforms. Next slide, please. Another sample, MOBs on technical assistance provision to school heads regarding the LDM Readiness Assessment Tool. You may include the photo documentation of the technical assistance sessions to school heads based on the results of their pre-implementation and midline readiness assessment survey. These fall under PPSS Strand 3.3, Culture of Research. At this point, let me bring you to the formatting guidelines. Next slide, please. The LDM Practicum portfolio can be submitted in either digital form or printed form. Digital submission may be collated in a slide deck, Google Slides, or PowerPoint, stored in a folder or other digital form that your SDO may provide. A digital or electronic submission is encouraged to reduce physical contact during pandemic and ease portfolio management. On the other hand, printed form or printed submission may be compiled in a folder or envelope. The following elements also have to be included in your portfolio. So, in your portfolio, there should be a cover or title page followed by the table of contents that include that after the title page or the cover, contents or the listed contents to help the readers navigate the portfolio. And of course, the short annotation that highlights the demonstration of progress in the implementation of the LDM and the information on the relevant strands in which the artifacts contribute to. Next slide, please. Sample portfolio page layout. Okay, so this is how you will arrange or lay out the page of your portfolio. So it bears the name of the artifacts, the professional's standard strand, the image, and the annotation. Next slide, please. So when are we going to submit our portfolio? Submission schedule is from April to July 2021. Coordinate with your SDO LDM program management team for the specific dates. Artifacts can be gathered throughout the year, and Practicum portfolio raters and evaluation form managers shall follow the same system used in the submission of the pre-implementation output. They may use the same drives, focal persons, and procedures in the collection and the consolidation of outputs and evaluation forms. Next slide, please. For the evaluation forms shall follow a similar consolidation structure as pre-implementation. Evaluators shall record portfolio scores using individual reports, while form managers shall consolidate results into list of completers. The evaluation forms for specific job groups are as follows. For the supervisors, the LDM Form 2P, LDM Portfolio Evaluation of Supervisors. Okay, next slide, please. Presentation is optional. Okay, next slide, please. This brings us to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. God bless SDO Pasay. God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Condes. And now, to discuss the practical portfolio guide and evaluation forms for LDM coaches, please welcome our Chief EPS in CID, Mr. Librado F. Torres. Take it away, sir.
Highly motivated men and women of the schools division of Pasay City, headed by our very inspiring leaders, our STEAM Schools Division Superintendent, Dr. Loretta B. Torrecampo, CESO 5,
Attendance po ay nandyan sa link po natin. Okay? Attendance po tandaan po natin. Dyan po yung link. Naka-flash po ngayon sa ating screen. So wait lang po. So yung mga katanungan nyo po mamaya, ipunin lang po natin dahil after Sir Torres, pagkakaroon po tayo ng question and answer po. Clearing of ideas po tayo later. So standby lang po.
Yan. Pasensya na kayo, tayo ay nagkakaroon ng problemang teknikal. So take 2 tayo. Again, highly motivated men and women of the schools division of Pasay City, headed by our very inspiring leaders, our esteemed schools division superintendent, Dr. Loretta B. Torrecampo, CESO 5, and our assistant schools division superintendent, Dr. Arturo A. Tolentino. Sa atin pong lahat, magandang buhay, magandang hapon. I would like to thank Dr. Rosalie Condes. Bakit? Na-discuss na po lahat ni Mama Condes ang lahat-lahat for our supervisors. I am tasked to discuss with you the guides for our coaches na public schools district supervisors din naman. Okay? So, let me show you the first part. Okay? I will not be discussing anymore the Practicum Portfolio Lock Guide. Na-discuss na po siya ng lahat ng mga presenters natin this afternoon. So, Ma'am Ice, doon na tayo sa page 4, Formatting Guidelines. Ayan. Okay. Kung mapapansin po ninyo, isa lang yung format. Okay? And this is very, very good in the sense that we'll have a guide on how to present our outputs. Okay? So, meron po tayong parts prescribed, yung cover, title page, the table of contents. Yung table of contents, doon tayo magpo-focus mamaya, no? Wherein we have 3 columns. The first column, you have there the MOVs being required. And then second column, the description of the MOVs, and then the strands, no? Or the standards, I should say. Okay? So we have the cover, the title page, table of contents, and the short annotations na ipaliwanag na iyan na in the annotation will include there or will reflect there if the MOVs, if the document that will be presented
is really aligned to the standard, or is that really a reflection of our function as supervisor? Okay, and then you may submit that. We have two options. You may submit that digitally in digital format, or you may submit that uh, in a folder or envelope. Pero mas maganda yata kung digital, no? Dahil pwede natin siyang i-file. Okay? Next, Ma'am Ives, for the forms to be submitted, okay, for supervisors, we have LDM Form 2P. Okay? Kamukha nang nabanggit na, the presentation is optional. Okay. Focus of my presentation is on next page, Ma'am Aisa, page 6. Okay. This was already presented by Ma'am Rose, but again, like what she said, these documents may be enriched because the list is not an exhausted list. Okay, meaning we can add some more if we think that those documents are reflective of the PPSS strand. Okay, or if those documents are reflective of our functions as supervisors. Okay, for the first artifact, it's on coaching reports, LAC, technical assistance, coaching reports on learning resource management. Like what has been said by Ma'am Rose, you may include photo documentation and or outputs on module development, localization, contextualization. Napakarami niyan. Or photo documentation or outputs, I should say, on module distribution and retrieval. But for me, during this time of pandemic, we do not talk only of module. We have other resources like you may include production, development of video lessons, production and development of learners' activity sheets. And lately, we plan to produce integrative task assessment tools. Okay, those are additional documents that may be added in terms of learning resource management. Okay, for the PPSS strand, of course, these documents are relative to learning resource management. Okay, a function of our supervisors under the Philippine Professional Standard for Supervisors. Ito na po yung bago. Okay, second group of second set of artifacts, I should say, is the LAC, the technical assistance, coaching reports in terms of learning management. Kamukha po ng nabanggit ni Ma'am Condes, you may include any of the following: photo documentation and or outputs on crafting of work, home learning plans of our teachers, and individual learners monitoring plans created also or drafted by our teachers for the learners and for the parents. Alam naman natin ng ating mga education program supervisors and public schools district supervisors, they assist teachers in crafting these two, the weekly home learning plan and the individual learners monitoring plan. Okay? Another is the photo documentation and or outputs related to curriculum innovations. Okay? Siyempre, meron pa rin tayong mga innovations na inaasahan, and we can have a proof of those, especially on assisting our school heads in the implementation of those interventions or innovations. Another one is the photo documentation. Going back to innovations, marami pa rin yan, no? Meron tayo Project Heart for English, yung mga remedial reading programs natin, tuloy-tuloy sila. And then yung ating remediation sessions for other learning areas. Yan. Yan ay mga interventions, innovations amidst the pandemic wherein the supervisors, no, have a part, especially on the provision of technical assistance to our teachers and provision of technical assistance also to our school heads. Okay? Another set of documents that may be presented in terms of learning management is the photo documentation and or outputs related to assessment. Yan. So meron tayong mga written assessment tools prepared by our teachers aside from the module that we developed. Meron din silang set of practice exercises, especially for other types of learners that we have in the school. No? Meron tayong set for the fast learners and we have another set for our slow learners or those learners with special learning needs. Okay? We may include all those, no, under this artifact on learning management. Okay, and because we're talking about learning management, you can include, our supervisors, our EPSS, our PSDSS may include also documents on their observation of classes. That's part of learning management. And documents reflecting their monitoring and coaching of teachers. Okay? Kahit virtual yan, syempre, mahalaga rin na makapture natin how we coach and how we mentor our teachers amid the pandemic that we are experiencing now, right? So yun yung mga pwede nating idagdag. Okay? Ano yung mga PPSS strand related to this or reflective of these activities? 1.1, curriculum implementation. Siyempre, no? Ito lahat ay nakaangkla dun sa ating most essential learning competencies, no? That we implement now in the midst of the pandemic. Okay, that's our prescribed curriculum now, the MELCs. Curriculum innovation, and then curriculum contextualization, part of enhancing or enriching the curriculum that we have, or the MELCs, and of course, the learning outcomes and assessments. Okay, next. Another set of artifacts is on the LAC, technical assistance, coaching report in terms of teacher, school head capacity. Okay? And under this, you may include photo documentation or activity reports of district or cluster, division initiated, or sponsored professional development activities for teachers. Okay? So on the part of our EPSS, you may include here the trainings that you conducted in your specific learning area, while on the other hand, our PSDSS may include documentation on the divisional learning action cells that they conducted during school year 2020-2021. Okay? And of course, these are reflective of the strand on learning and development of school personnel. Okay? Learning and development of school personnel. You may also add coaching and mentoring sessions with our school head. Kanina, mentoring and coaching with our teachers. Okay? But this time, coaching mentoring, or recommendations that you provided to or with our school heads. Okay? Next set of artifacts. LAC TA coaching report, or reports, I should say, on or in terms of school operations. You may include photo documentation or activity reports of cluster or district, division initiated or sponsored professional development activities for school head. Yan. LAC sessions with school heads. Kamukha nang nabanggit ko na, pwede rin naman yung how shall I call it? Mentoring, coaching, no? With our school heads, meeting with them, okay? LAC session with them, okay? And strands reflective of these activities, we have technical assistance provision, support for instructional leadership, and communities of practice. Next set is reflective summary. Ito yung madalas nakakalimutan ng ating mga teachers, ating mga school heads, and even supervisors. Ito pa naman ang, I consider this as one of the most important parts, one of the most important parts of your report. Siyempre, kayo ba ay merong insights na natutunan, merong mga lesson na in addition to what you already know, yan. No? Kaya nga, reflection siya. Okay? This reflective essay should answer. Hindi naman maliligaw kasi may question. Do you feel that this collection of work really reflects your abilities and what you have achieved this year through the LDM course? Why or why not? Okay. So there's a guide question for your reflection. I repeat, do not forget this part because this is one of the most significant parts of your output for this LDM2. Okay? Self-directed. Yan. Nabanggit na po ito ni Ma'am Rose, no? Yung kanina required yun, pwedeng dagdagan. And aside from the dagdag, ito pa yung iba, self-selected, no? Especially those supervisors who are in charge of our special programs. Open High School, Madrasa, Alternative Learning System, DRRM, Indigenous People's Education, Special Interest Programs, Journalism, Foreign Language, etc. Yan. So you may include artifacts on coaching, LAC, technical assistance provided in terms of household or community capacity. Okay? You may include photo documentation activity reports of your cluster, division initiated, sponsored capability building activities for parents, guardians, and other stakeholders. Okay. Especially the PSDSS na nagkaroon po sila ng parte in terms of provision of technical assistance and suggestions, recommendations to our school heads regarding conduct of activities for our school stakeholders like parents, especially nung tayo ay nagsisimula pa. Okay? So yun po yung kaibahan. Ito ay mga artifacts na ito, MOVs ng ating mga accomplishments dun po sa implementation ng LDN. Yung part 1, that's making us readiness, no? Preparation. Okay? But this time, for LDM2, ito na yung, ano yung mga na-accomplish natin? Okay? Na naka-align na po doon sa ating PPSS strands. Okay? These are already what have been accomplished by our supervisors for the whole school year of 2020-2021. Another MOVs in terms of communication with teachers and school head, marami to. Okay? Ito yung mga online meetings, coaching, mentoring, online pa rin. Okay? Using different communication platforms, the memorandums that you issued, yan, mga video conferencing, etc. Okay? Ang strand dyan, of course, technology-based innovation, including ICT, use of communication platforms. And lastly, MOV on TA provision to school heads, LDM readiness assessment tool. Okay? You may include here photo documentation of technical assistance sessions to school heads based on the results of their pre-implementation and midline readiness assessment surveys. Okay? PPSS strand culture of excellence. Okay? So from the 10 PSTSS that we selected 4 as to act as coaches for this LDM2 at sila po yung magsasubmit ng mga ito. Although, the other supervisors have to submit also their own outputs. No? Okay? Na almost similar to the outputs of our coaches. Okay? So I guess I'm done with my part. Maraming salamat po. Thank you. God bless all of us.
Thank you very much, Sir Bob Torres. And now, let's move on now to our last part of this LDM Practicum Portfolio Guides and Evaluation Forms. So please welcome our SEPs and HRD, and to discuss the LDM updates and SDO Practicum Evaluation Form and mag-clear of ideas din po tayo. Please welcome Mr. Noel P. Miranda. Take it away, Mother.
A pleasant day, everybody. Siguro I need to remove my mask para hindi ako mahirapan magsalita. Okay, I'm just done with my meeting with the HRD NEA, and I'm tasked to talk about the LDM updates. Anyway, the LDM updates is for us, and you're going to gain something with what I'm going to talk about later on, because I'm going to discuss also the schedule. Aisa. Okay, yan po sa screen na nakikita nyo ngayon. Yan yung LDM updates na folder na kung saan meron kaming papasukin na link. Next slide, please. Yan. We need to make it a habit to check this deck regularly for announcements and updates, lalo na yung mga ano ninyo, mga sinasubmit ninyo. Okay, next slide, please. Saglit lang itong talk ko. The supplemental guide on portfolio, as you can see on the screen, on portfolio building and other related documents are now available. They can be accessed through bit.ly/LDM portfolio eval. SDO and regional LD focal person, kami po yung SDO LD focal person, we are instructed to update the LDM trackers. Yun po yung ano. Hindi ako masyadong nakikita. Okay. Now, next slide please. Ayan po yung mga link on your screen. All LDM1 resources makikita sa bit.ly/LDM1 modules. Then all DM2 resources sa bit.ly LDM2 modules. Then, yung navigation slide deck for all LDM1 evaluation resources, nasa bit.ly LDM1 eval slide. Then, yun namang navigation slide deck for all LDM2 evaluation resources, makikita sa bit.ly LDM2 evaluation slide. Next slide, please. Ito po yung mga frequently asked questions. Tinatanong dito, paano daw magagamit yung LDM certificate para sa application ng reclassification or promotion? Yes, magagamit po ito. Kung paano daw po magagamit. LDM certificates can be used by any LDM participants in their application for reclassification promotion. A memo on this address to the field offices has been issued. May memo na po tungkol dito na kung gusto nyo magpa-reclass, kung gusto nyo magpa-promote, magagamit nyo itong LDM certificates. By the way, the learning delivery modalities is part of the basic education BLP. What do you call that? Yung the learning plan, the continuity, nawawala ako basic continuity, learning continuity plan. Okay. Now, next is can I use my pre-implementation outputs in my practicum portfolio? For your pre-implementation portfolio, this should only contain the required outputs in each module. These outputs are indicated in the course introduction overview module also. You are not required to submit your study notebook. NEAP will also release this April, release na po the list of required outputs for your practicum portfolio, as discussed in Module 5 or Module 7, to guide you in building it. Most of these practicum artifacts, MOBs, are outputs that you already have as part of your daily practice. And some can also be used, pakitandaan to, and some can also be used for your RPMS portfolio. Meaning, yung ibang mga inilagay nyo sa portfolio, pwede po nating gamitin sa portfolio natin sa ating RPMS. By July, tapos na po tayo sa ating school year. Mga teachers, pwede nyo pong gamitin ito, even our master teachers, sa ating RPMS portfolio. These practicum outputs are evidence of how you applied what you have learned from the LDM course. Isa pa, I haven't received my LDM certificate of participation. What shall I do? You may coordinate with your SDO LDM PMT or the SDO HRDS. Kami po yun ni Ma'am Jessie. As they are the ones coordinating with the regional LDM PMT NEAP regional HRD. Okay, next slide please. Ito na po. Pakitunghayan pong maigi ang ating mga susunod na gagawin, ang ating horoscope para sa June. Magkakaroon po tayo ng lock session. Kailangan nyo pong mag-lock session kung paano mag-build ng portfolio. Gaganapin ito dapat from June 7, 2021 to June 11, 2021. Bahala na kayong pagkasyahin yan. Ngayon, kung hindi nyo pagkakasyahan, sige, gawin nyo hanggang buong June. Basta maisingit nyo yung building portfolio na lock session. Tapos yung practicum, yung pagbuo na ng portfolio, pag-gather ng evidences, hanggang July 30 po. Pwede rin mas maaga para mas maaga namin ma-evaluate ang portfolio nyo. Then, pagdating unang August 2 hanggang August 20, 2021, dahil napakarami ho natin, i-evaluate din namin yung portfolio. Kaya mas maganda, maaga-aga pa sa August 2, by siguro mga third week ng July, matapos nyo na yung pagbuo ng portfolio ninyo. Anyway, continuous naman po ito. Nuulit ko, yung ginagawa nyong portfolio for sure, meron niyang pang RPMS, pwede nyo rin hong gamitin para you're striking a bird by two bullets. Nag-LDM portfolio kayo at the same time na gagawa nyo rin yung inyong RPMS portfolio dahil pwede naman pong gamitin. And the way I see things to it, meron talaga kayong magagamit from your LDM portfolio na maaari nyo ilagay sa inyong RPMS portfolio. Okay, tuloy po tayo. Yun pong ating submission ng list of completers kasi na-evaluate na namin, malalaman namin doon sino nakakumpleto is from August 23 to 27. Kaya sa evaluation pa lang po ng portfolio, ang pakiusap lang po namin ay gawin na po natin ito ng matino and at the same time, aga-agahan po natin. Para naman, makapag-submit na kami ng list of completers. Kasi tapos na yung theoretical nyo. Ang inaantay na lang po namin ay yung practicum. And this is the practicum. The evidence says your MOVs for the LDM portfolio will be the basis for you and for us to recognize that you are a completer for LDM 1 course and LDM 2 course. Alam naman ho natin kung sino yung mga nag-LDM 1 at sino ang mga nag-LDM 2. Okay? Then, pagkatapos po niyan, isasubmit po namin yan sa region para ang region makonsolidate yung completers by August 31 to September 3. Then, the certificates will be issued on September 6 to 30, 2021. Depende po sa dating ng mga isasubmit sa region. Wag po tayong ang tawag dito maging kampante dahil next week ho ay June na. Mabilis na po ito kaya let us all take the most of everything as far as the completion of the LDM course is being finalized. As far as the completion of the LDM course is concerned, let us all bolt in kasi tapos na po tayo sa theoretical, practicum na lang po ito. At ang mag-decide ng ating practicum ay yung ampong portfolio. Kaya napakahalaga po na magkaroon kayo ng LAC sessions on building portfolio. Okay? And with that, I congratulate all of you in advance regarding this undertaking. And please put in your mind that the learning delivery modality is part of the basic education learning continuity plan. Kaya ho, we cannot do away with this. This is a must. And with that, isa pong magandang hapon sa ating lahat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Noel P. Miranda. And so may katanungan pa po ba tayo? I think wala na. Wala na po bang katanungan sa ating comments? Sa chat box, ano yatang comments? Walang sounds? Wala ba? Hello? Wala daw sound? Kanina pa to. 3:44. Wala na po ba tayong tanong? I think that's all for today. Thank you very much for attending. And have a great day, everyone.